chance to take home an Apple gadget, get in touch with our property specialist to know how to get an Apple gadget from Ortigas Land.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Opportunities Matter, a webinar for investors, brought to you by Ortigas Land. I am Paulina Aguilar, and I will be your host for this afternoon. For questions throughout the discussion, you may send them via the comment section in our Facebook page or via the Q&A box here in Zoom, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Today, we have with us a very knowledgeable speaker who can guide us on managing one's wealth. He is the president and CEO of Rampur Financials, a dynamic player in the financial services specializing in investments and one of the biggest distributors of mutual funds here in the Philippines. He is the lead independent director of two listed companies, Globe Telecom and Ayala Land Logistics Corporation, and an independent director of two listed firms, the National Reinsurance Corporation and Ayala Land Inc. He is also a director of Esquire Financing Inc., the Colinian Group, Technomarine Philippines, Seven Tall Trees Events Company Inc., and Mobile Group Inc. He is a member of Brother Bo Sanchez Mastermind Group and is cited by many as one of the best leadership, business strategy, investments, marketing, and sales speakers in the country. He is the author of two books, Trailblazing Success and Firing on All Cylinders, both certified national bestseller. He served as the president and CEO of PhilAmLife, one of the country's most trusted financial services conglomerates, and was chairman of its affiliates and subsidiaries. Prior to his position at PhilAmLife and the AIE Group, he was also the senior vice president and chief marketing and sales officer of Ayala Land Inc., wherein he held several concurrent positions, including president of Ayala Land International Sales Inc. and chairman of Ayala Land Sales Inc. Let us all welcome Mr. Rex Mendoza.
Hi, a great day to all of you. It's a fantastic day of learning, a fantastic day of insights, and thank you so much for making us a part of your day. I really want to dwell into the tidbits that I'm going to be discussing very, very fast because they didn't give me a lot of time. Anyway, we're all focused on not just surviving this pandemic, but maybe doing well through it. Because I think we all know things like this, they do come to pass. But what happens afterwards? I think it's very clear that we have to navigate ourselves and our financial journey amidst the pandemic with a clear view that when it does come to pass, we are going to be in a better foothold than when we were entering it. If you're going to be looking at what's happening today, let me just tell you the trends that are out there. Obviously, there's still low business and consumer confidence. People are not yet out. There's still quarantine protocols. Everybody is into digital. The push towards digital is evident in all consumer transactions, in all exchanges, even in finance and investments. However, I think this is going to be crucial. I think a lot of people would say top of mind will be health, top of mind will be security. Surprisingly, most of the surveys that are out shows that Filipino top of mind today is their financial situation. Yes, that is true. Some people think about, they're running out, they're coming up with, problems like where am I going to get the next meal and all of that stuff. Like, will the government help me? But on the other hand, there are people on this other end of the spectrum, and I guess many of you are here. These are the people who have worked through their lives building up a nest egg, an estate, a portfolio. And the top of mind is, how do I get to protect this? How do I make sure that I keep value? And certainly years from now, I should enjoy the fruits of my labor. But I might get to lose value at this time. So what should I need to do? That's the reason why this financial spectrum is becoming a top of mind everywhere else. Lastly, we're Filipinos. We're Filipinos. Everyone's looking at a brighter future. If you're going to be asking people where they're going to be, how their life is going to be in 12 months, they're going to say, oh, it's going to be a lot better than today. And where are we today? I mean, this is the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. And sorry for using it. It's for me, the most effective forward-looking indicator of the way big business is and the way investors feel about the economy. That was such a big drop. That was a big drop from the start of the year. And March, the big drop in 16 days, 41% of the market. Big recovery, 40% up. Not quite there because of the base, but from then on, a consolidation. And what do I mean by that? We're not really so sure about the direction now. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. It's in the doldrums. And that's a reason why technically we will really have to come to grips on how we can deal with this, because usually consolidations are followed by either recoveries or a further drop. The thing is, whatever follows it, the driver has to be the action that you're going to be taking on. The question becomes, do we survive or do we thrive? I always say this, a matter of fact, not everyone that falls on water drowns. The guy who stays submerged in water is the guy who will drown. But there are guys who would tread water, put their neck and head above water and breathe, they will survive. But there are guys who jump on water, frolic, swim, and have fun. They're the guys who thrive. Now, if we're going to be asking ourselves, where are we in that kind of a spectrum? Where are we and what type of an investor are we amongst those three? Obviously, the thrust, ladies and gentlemen, is to be someone who thrives. And that's the reason why you got invited to this webinar. I think all of us are positioned to see what possibilities there are, what opportunities are out there to make sure we're in a better foothold. Because the view of the economy is not really that good. And that's the reason why I guess a lot of us are worried. You know, these prolonged lockdowns have been pushing, the economic activity to somehow a very, very low level. We're looking at GCQ for Metro Manila, and that's over 50% of our GDP. So where are we going to be at? The thrust is going to be dire because unlike before, crisis periods, it's big business that is hit. Today, retail is hit. The micro, small, and medium-scale industries are hit. And that's the reason why if we are going to be getting into a road to recovery, the government will play a big role. They'll play a role in terms of Keynesian economies, where the government will have to be the one spending and priming. And they have to do that, or else they're going to be sacrificing economic activity where they're going to be drawing taxes from anyway. So we have to be looking at that. The thing is, a few days ago, President Duterte has already signed Bayanihan 2. So this is already a plus. The bill is there. The stimulus is clear. It's now a matter of implementation. But there are silver linings, and the silver linings are pretty clear. You would see it here. Traffic is bad. I think for a lot of you who've been out there in the roads, traffic is bad. Traffic is back. And this is a report coming from Metro Pacific. The vehicles in NLEX, ECITEX, and Cavitex, look at all of them. I mean, they're going back. If they're not back, they're quite close to 2019 levels. Look at water. We've been consuming water much like there was no pandemic at all. Electricity is fast rising, and soon as the manufacturing firms get open, you will see this not just equal 2019 levels, but go beyond that. The key challenges would obviously be energy because of global energy, because of the utilization of electricity for industrial use. And lastly, the debacle that happened within the LRT. And that's the reason why, nobody wants to ride that. But this, on the other flip side, knowing that business is going to be challenged, this is another hit for us investors. The bonds would be the best refuge for investment managers. And that's good because they can position themselves in bonds so that they can get capital gains. However, savers like you and me, we get hit because interest rates are going down. And they're going to be down for long. Now, This is a very, very important thing to understand, especially for you guys who have set up, a base where you can get cash flows from the bank due to your time deposits. Clearly, you have to be worried about one, that rate getting lower, so you're going to earn less. And worse, the base of value will also be erased because purchasing power is going to get hit sometime soon. So we will have to be creative enough to move out of all of these just fixed income instruments and position ourselves relatively for some amount of growth. Protect a bit of our cash flows, but get ourselves into a higher level of growth. Just look at how the companies are earning. These are all the 30 companies of the PSEI, and only 5 are showing growth over 2019. So if you're going to ask me what will lead to a faster recovery, these things, the lifting of the quarantine protocols, the lifting of the GCQ, particularly in Metro Manila, ascertaining the impact of earnings. Once companies begin to take that curve, and I'm sure that all of you will agree with me, the third quarter will be better than the second quarter. The second quarter is where we're really ultimately closed. Today, we're opening up, and that's the reason why we're going to be seeing the silver linings. The stimulus package, we know it's already there, matter of implementation. And lastly, I guess this is the monkey wrench. Once you get that vaccine out, I think all of us are going to be bringing up or maybe intensifying that economic activity. How about real estate? Real estate, as they say, will it crash? Will it slow down? Will it hold? See, there's been quite a bit of debate there, but I tell a lot of people, it will be the secondary market that will be distressed. Why? Because there are people who will be losing jobs. There are people who will be not getting the remittances from abroad and stuff like that. That's the reason why I specifically say this would be hitting the middle to the lower middle and the low income segments. Okay? That's where it's going to be. Secondary market, lower level economic status. That's where maybe some opportunities are going to, surface for buyers, but there are going to be distressed sales all around, especially in suburban and subprime locations. However, the primary market is going to be very resilient. We have very strong developers today, so the risks of not finishing projects, the risk of non-completion is not going to be there. Deep discounting is not going to be prevalent. Companies will be coming up with great deals, but they're not going to be selling their properties down the drain like what happened in 97, if some of you remember that. But these stronger balance sheets will help our developers maintain their prices and make sure that strong hands also end up owning those particular units. Be that as it may, if that's the economic scenario, where does that put us? I always go back to people and I tell them, you know what? History always repeats itself. History always repeats itself endlessly for people who never learn. I always remember friends saying this. You know what? I could have bought property in 2008. I could have bought property in 2009. Now that it's 2013, it's so expensive. How I wish I can go back to that crisis. Now we're into another crisis and not a lot of people are positioning again. I will see this happen by 2025, 2026. People are going to be saying the same things and they're going to be waiting for the next crisis. It's almost like I'm tempted to say, if I have a time machine and I can take you to that time machine and bring you back to 2008, will you invest? I think the answer is yes, right? But you see, we're not in 2008, we're in 2020. And the prices that you're seeing today has not taken you back to 2008. It won't. And in 2 to 3 years from now, you'll never see these prices again. That's the reason why I tell a lot of people, how do you react to it? We cannot control circumstances. We never control economies. We control ourselves. As investors, we control our reactions. Let me show you this. We are worried about this. Minus 24 from the start of the year. Minus 30 plus from the height in 2018. We're so worried about those numbers. Look at this. Minus 51 in 2008, 2009. And look at that curve that went up. Look at this, 1997 was minus 65. And in 2001, it went down further to minus 71. But you don't see those prices back, right? Time has a way of getting these issues and crises off your cuff, off your sleeves. It's minus 58 in the 1990s. What happened then? That was a political crisis with all the coup attempts against Cory. 1997 was the Asian financial crisis, and 2008 was the global financial crisis precipitated by the US subprime crisis. What are differences in all of these? Many differences. I cannot discuss them. I don't have too much time. But let me tell you this, it's more important to look at what's the same. And I'll tell you, there's a thin line that cuts through all that. All crises, they're all followed by a recovery. Unfortunately, when we're into a crisis, no one thinks recovery. But afterwards, all crises have been followed by a recovery. And then you get to ask yourself, what have you done in that particular situation where the opportunities abound? What have you done? Wealth management is a full-scale, needs-based management that assists individuals and families in the accumulation, preservation, and transfer of wealth by customizing the right product solutions to meet goals and objectives. Our job in wealth management is to understand we're in different phases of our lives. Some people are in accumulation, some people are in preservation, some people are going to be in wealth transfer. No matter what stage you're in, the more important thing to think of is not really just to earn more money. The important thing to think of is asset allocation. You see, asset allocation is actually the way an investor implements a strategy where he invests in different positions: stocks, bonds, real estate, cash for liquidity, to build a kitty that balances risk and rewards based on his own risk tolerance, time horizon, and more importantly, the goals that he has set, the goals that he wants to fulfill. So a lot of people don't necessarily know this, but asset allocation really drives performance. It's actually what drives performance. So it's not a matter of what you earn per instrument. It's actually the mix of your instruments, because that mix carries you through over time. And it's very important for us to take note of this, because the Filipino normally invests to earn more money. That's not going to be sustainable. When you're going to be looking at earning more money as an objective, you will throw risk management off the window. So very importantly, think about asset allocation in a longer term scenario, because the truth is, strategic investing is done through asset allocation. So real wealth management focuses on strategic investing, where the negative effects on the environment, the negative effects of crisis are taken out. And the reason why it's very important to take note of property is because property has to be an integral part of asset allocation, no matter what objectives you might have in those three phases of wealth management that I've just mentioned. Just take a look at this. Real property enhances asset portfolios. There is cash flow. You can rent it out. If you're not using the property, you can rent it out. And technically, if you actually own the property and live with it or live in it, what happens? You save yourself the rental that you're supposed to pay, the cash flow that's going to go out. You see, in the purest sense, an investor leases the property to himself. And for that reason, the property still has to pay off. There is also a natural price appreciation, because obviously real property has limited volume and there is demand that goes up and down over the years. And that's the reason why property prices go up. It's a supply and demand situation. Now, think about it. People will always say, oh, there's a bubble. Hello, when you talk about bubbles, Bubbles happen when you have too much volume and very little demand. You have too much supply and very little demand. But the Philippines has always been in a situation where we are behind our supply, especially, and I have to mention this, especially on the high-end part, on the upscale and luxury side of the spectrum. There are over 100,000 AAA families in the Philippines. There are only 19,000 homes on the AAA level on subdivisions. On condominium units, less than 50,000. So as those families grow, where will the supply come from? And that's the reason why natural appreciation is a part of this. However, there's also forced appreciation. When you get your unit, you connect it, put it, give it to an interior decorator that can do magic and design on it. You can actually put in technology. That pushes appreciation on a development standpoint. So natural or forced, you get all the results. Real property also enhances asset portfolios because it's a tangible security. It's finite. I often say this to a lot of friends. If you decide to buy stock today, you buy that stock today. If you decide to buy that same stock 1 month from now, that stock is still going to be available. The only question is going to be price. And that's the reason why in stocks, one can actually hold back. When he's comfortable, that's the time he can actually buy. And as long as he pays a bit of a premium because markets have already moved up, he's going to be comfortable. At least the market is already out of the doldrums. You cannot do that with real estate because by that time you get to buy, those properties that you want to buy might not be there because they're finite. There is one unit that you and I can buy. Once I buy it, you cannot buy it anymore because I have bought it unless you will buy it from me. And obviously, since I'm not going to be a motivated seller, then you will have to pay an extra price for that. Replacement cost is another issue. Our condominium units are made up of cement, steel, glass, stone. All of these rise in value. And if we're going to be replicating the buildings we built 5 years ago, can we put them up at the same price? Obviously not. That's the reason for the replacement cost. And then there are tax benefits. If you know how to be able to put this in an accounting presentation, you ask your consultants, you ask your tax accountants, you can actually charge some of the expenses you have in your properties from your taxable income, preserving the cash that you have and lowering the level of leakages. Now, if I'm going to be mentioning something about property, this is going to be one of the big things. Because mind you, I myself would learn my lesson from this. Because in the past, when I started buying real estate, I started buying real estate based on what I can afford. What I didn't realize, my other friends are doing this. They are leveraging on it. Instead of buying, because I'm quite risk averse at that time, I put up a huge down payment, or at times I do get to pay cash. So the property is mine. For the same amount of money, they actually buy 4 units. They buy 4 units. And they amortize the payments on all of those 4 units. Can you just imagine this in 2008? Right? By 2013, they're not fully paid on all the 4 units. But prices have already become different. So, many of them were able to sell 1 or 2 units. The kind of return you have is going to be in multiples, not in percentages, because they're not fully paid. Can you imagine this? I mean, I'll just get these numbers from thin air, but it's like if you are looking at the price per square meter at 100,000 and you haven't paid 100,000, you just put a down payment of 10,000, and in a span of 3 years, you've only paid 30,000 out of the 100,000, 30%. If that property rose from 100,000 to 150,000, how much did you earn? 50%? Wrong. It's 50,000 over the 30 that you have paid. So that's over 140%. That is 140%. So much so that if they're able to sell 1, 2, or 3 units, depending on the way the prices move, they can actually retain 1 unit for free. So technically, this is the way they've expanded their coffers. I did not learn that for a long period, and I realized that's the way to go. The rich people know how to use leverage. And when I talk leverage, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not talking about leverage in terms of money only. It's also leverage in terms of talent. Putting up a business and hiring the best people. You use the talent of other people, obviously the results after you pay them salaries is going to be yours. Can you just imagine? After a certain process, some of them didn't even sell. They refinanced it. So after paying off like 50 to 60% of the property, they refinanced the property, got a bit of equity, and started with a 10% thing that they're going to be amortizing again. Guess what happens to the cash that they get? They buy a new property. So once you do refinancing, you can actually expand your base. Talk to your property specialist. There are so many ways of creatively crafting a financial portfolio growth plan through property. Again, last one, but more importantly, again, legacy for generations. I have yet to see someone who's thinking about giving heirs shares of stock and being proud about it. That kind of value gets erased in 1 generation. They can easily sell that. Let me tell you this. The richest families in Paris, in Florence, Italy, in the great cities of Europe, the most wealthy families have been the wealthiest families for about 400 years. You know why? Because they own the real properties that are at the city centers. Their heirs just get the cash flow. But from generation to generation, they've passed off those properties. And that's the reason why a good friend of mine who's been so deep with financial securities all of a sudden started accumulating real estate. And I get to ask him, why? And that's what he said. If I'm going to be giving stocks to my children, I'm going to be happy with 1 or 2 generations. It's going to be gone. But as I'm building up this property portfolio, this estate, I can see this surviving 5 generations. In fact, my children will build it up for the next generation and the next generation. And this is where real legacy happens. So ladies and gentlemen, don't focus on income. Focus on the goal. Focus on the goal and allocate based on the goal so that you can get your real wealth management principles going. But not all developers and not all real property are the same. Certainly, there are good developers, there are named developers, and there are great brands. You have to know who you're going to be dealing with. Ortigas Land is a name and a brand that we've known for a long, long time, for decades. In fact, maybe when I was still a small child with growing up with Green Hills there, and when I really, started getting to be an adult, an adolescent, Valle Verde, places like Green Meadows, Tiendecitas, and more recently, Capitol Commons. All of these are names, brands, and locations and growth centers done by Ortigas Land. And why do we say that not all real estate is the same? It's because developers have a way of creating the value. Differentiation always makes a difference. Gone were the days when we say real estate is driven by location. I'll tell you, sometimes the wrong location becomes right depending on what a developer does with the property. And it can go the other way around. The right location can get to be a dud because the developer did not know what to do with it. If you're going to be looking at Capitol Commons, if you're going to be looking at Ortigas Center, isn't that how growth centers are supposed to be managed and planned? And that's the reason why land, condo units, property in general, slowly but surely accumulate in these places. I might even be wrong by saying slowly. There are times when the blips happen. And usually that happens after a crisis. It's not only the developer commitment, expertise, and capital. It's also how they get to drive strategic infrastructure. When there is strategic infrastructure, you know that it's going to be a place for the future. You know it's being connected by new bridges, it's getting connected by new railways, it's even getting connected by a subway. These are going to be all game changers in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you're looking to invest in 5 to 10 years, you have to be looking at what's going to be there in terms of infrastructure. And then design. Design and the way people put up the building and the property itself. Design and architecture is a clincher because there are buildings and properties that are still new that relatively look old. And there have been buildings and properties that will look classic and timeless even if they've been there for a long, long time. So clearly, let me go back and say, knowing that these are the opportunities, I go back to objectives. What are our objectives? Live that fulfilled life, give that sustainable legacy to the people we love. If we're going to be doing that, then what are we putting in to our investment portfolios? Genuine wealth management is done when people just don't think about investment management. Investment management, while important in the optimization process, just takes you a certain step. But it's not going to take you to the leaps over time. You know what will do that? It's real wealth enhancement. Number one, taking care of the leakages, taking care of the taxes, and taking care of the use of leverage, as I mentioned earlier. These are the things that will make you expand your base. And if you know how to do this, and if you can ask people to teach you how to do this, you can actually grow by leaps and bounds and not by taking excessive risks. The third one is wealth and asset protection. Have you protected your wealth and assets from your children, from your in-laws? You have to. Worse, have you protected it from other claimants? We also have to put a moat around our portfolio to make sure that as we build it, we are secure from claimants, from unnecessary third parties who can lead more of these things to leakages. And lastly, legacy planning. Think about your generational impact. It's not what you're going to leave behind. It's what's going to be there multi-generations. And it's not just the money. See, money can be easy to lose. But properties, because of their long-term nature, because of their tangible, long-lasting nature, they're positioned for generational impact. And as you get yourself towards real legacy planning, you cannot avoid having real estate within that portfolio. And it's not just simply the simple real estate positions. It should be real luxury property investments. Because let me be very clear with this. Luxury property might look a bad decision today. But that same property will look very different 4 to 5 years from now. In terms of pricing, in terms of basic demand. Don't you notice something? When we are in a growth phase, these properties, because of their rare nature, they even get to be raffled off. There are going to be 2 or 3 buyers for them. But in the meantime, because we're in a crisis, no one actually takes heed. No one notices. But this is the time to pounce, right? Luxury properties hold their value. And not only that, get yourself to that level where their rarity can bring in value 3-4 years from now. The use of leverage and the use of cash flows and tax benefits can make property compete with other investment instruments like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And lastly, properties at the highest end of the spectrum always holds value over time. I remember my good friend Winston Garcia. He was part of GSIS at the time. He says, Rex, you know why I'm not so keen into stocks? Because real estate is different. Real estate doesn't make me live with my mistakes for long. Real estate, I can never make a mistake because time corrects my mistake. In stocks, your mistake stays because some of them don't actually recover. In real estate, what it has is a pause during crisis periods. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope I was very clear with the opportunities that are out there. You're invited today and you've been really held valuable by the property specialist that got you that invite. I hope you give them time to discuss these opportunities, what you can get through and what you can get into, so that real wealth management becomes worthwhile for you. When we anchor ourselves, everything that we do on what truly matters, we're not going to be looking for the motivation, the inspiration. We're not going to be looking for the energy. We're not going to be looking for the right decisions. If we're always anchored on the people who are special to us, who matter to us, those decision parameters change, and we're going to be making correct ones. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attention. I'm open now to questions. Salamat po.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Rex Mendoza, for that insightful talk. So we will take a short break before we proceed with the Q&A portion.
When was the last time you slept like a baby? These days, we rarely give our minds a rest. And as a result, we often feel stress, easily overwhelmed, lost in thought almost half of our waking hours. And everybody just assumes, well, that's life. But it doesn't have to be this way. You need to switch off when you get home. We're used to busyness, but calm, that's new. You need your home to cultivate clarity. We need to find space for more contentment. It's time to treat the home as an investment in health and wellness. Step into the Empress life. The Empress is a 56-story residential building at the heart of Capitol Commons. It's one part social experiment, one part endless summer. The Empress is within the global urban community known as Capitol Commons, at the heart of the city. Capitol Commons will soon be even easier to reach, with a BGC Ortigas link that will cut travel time from 1 hour to 12 minutes. The Metro Manila Subway, the first ever underground rapid transit line, will run from north to south of Manila and will be the country's direct airport rail link to the international airport. The train stops at Ortigas North and Ortigas South, making the Empress at Capitol Commons accessible to all. The Empress has a biophilic design. This means natural materials, natural light, and greenery are built into the environment.
Collectively, we must shake up our thinking. Healthy homes are as important as immunizations. Parks, paths, and plants are as beneficial as prescriptions. Friends and neighbors are far more important than Fitbits.
Nature remains our magic well. The more we draw from its nourishing waters, the more we sustain the human body, mind, and spirit.
The Empress is designed to give you breathing space, to reset, to be present, for creative living or conscious parenting, for peace or exhilaration. Chromotherapy, also known as color therapy, is used to enhance the mood and improve the overall health of our residents. The reading room in red invigorates the mind, while residents lounge in rich blue hues creates a relaxing mood. Colors enhanced by water and light soothes or enhance the mood. What was once considered a novelty is now a true priority for the forward-thinking developer. The Empress is green building compliant. The open space is dedicated to plant life and flora. No harmful paints were used. Materials recovery facility and rainwater collection tank make the Empress a new Ortigas standard. And every home at the Empress has all the smarts. The home gateway connects the entertainment systems, state-of-the-art security, climate control which you can check on your phone. We must always change, renew, rejuvenate ourselves, otherwise we harden. To feel the wind in our hair, grass on our feet, nature helps ground us. And the Empress at Capitol Commons is the perfect home for finally living well.
Welcome back, everyone. We will now proceed with the Q&A portion. So, Sir Rex, real estate is one of the most tried and tested instruments for asset creation and asset accumulation. Young professionals and couples starting a family at the onset aspire and to acquire their first home, while more established professionals and business owners continue to acquire and accumulate properties to add to their portfolio. So for you, sir, what do you think would be some of the best strategies to preserve one's real estate asset?
I guess no matter where you are in that particular spectrum, if you're starting out and you have already this chance to own property, I think you can get into it as early as possible because, again, real property is inflation hedged because of its very nature, it's long term, and it will hold its value over time. However, if you have already accumulated a base of property, then you have to be able to grow that continuously. If you're getting cash flows out of it, where do those cash flows go? You have to ask yourself that question. Those cash flows will have to be funneled back to grow that particular base so that at the end of the day, it really becomes unstoppable. Pao, just to mention this, I've told a lot of people, if you have 12 properties for rent, you've got it made, right? You're going to be sitting pretty, collecting rent. You don't need to work. That is if your goal is at that level. I was at a certain point until I came across a friend, a very close friend of mine. Can just imagine how much he has now. He has 600 units for rent. What kind of a life will that person live, right? So it's not supposed to be stopped. It has to be accumulated. So it's very important that we get ourselves into that position of growth. Get on with it early if you're starting, and if you're already there, continuously accumulate because it is a very good asset to hold.
Okay, so that's a good point, sir. No, so start early, and then when you're there, when you accumulate your or when you get your first property, continue as much as you can, right? Okay, so thank you, sir. For our next question, so we say that wealthy people generally purchase and invest in branded, premium, and high quality products. Translated to property investment, this could mean owning a penthouse unit in a business district or purchasing special edition units such as bi-level units or garden suites in mixed-use developments, or even purchasing grade A office units for sale. What are the advantages of owning such properties compared to investing in several units of regular types of offerings?
I guess it's very important for us to characterize that situation. Most of these high-end units, because they're quite rare, there are only a few in a building. You cannot make like half the building like that, right? There are going to be a very few. And that's the reason why when it gets to a normalization of markets, these are going to be very coveted units. There would be many people fighting for those units. And that's the reason why at times we find the prices somehow, absurd. It's because sometimes the real pricing value is born out of demand. It's not really born out of the price of that particular asset. Let me give an example because you alluded to it. I'll follow through on that. Why aren't women worried about buying Hermes and LV? Because anytime you go back to the store, you're going to see that same bag at least at the same price or higher once you get back. In other stores, you won't be as confident. I can say many of them, Kate Spade, Coach, Tory Burch, they're good bags. But somehow you're a bit worried when you go back. Why? Because you might find the bag you bought 3 months ago at 30% off. That's the reason why at the very high end of it, prices hold. Because the people who have them don't exactly need the money that they will sell it down just to make liquidity happen. They have other sources of liquidity. That's the reason why I mentioned earlier in my presentation, once you're at that high-end, upscale and luxury side, you're never going to be too worried about pricing or the downside of it. And I guess I'll end with this because I always teach this to a lot of my friends. An investment rule that I always abide by. Take care of the downside, the upside will always take care of itself. Take care of the downside, the upside will always take care of itself. When you buy these high-end limited edition units, you're taking care of the downside because almost always they're never gonna sell for a song. And you protect yourself moving forward that way. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, sir, for that. We'll now proceed with the third question. So during the pandemic, we saw a lot of secondary sale of real estate products being sold and offered to buyers. In your opinion, what would be the advantage of pre-selling real estate products over secondary property?
Okay, opportunities abound. No, let me just say that the real essence of opportunities is the complete set of information that goes with it. See, what I don't like at times about picking the secondary market sales is because I still need to do some bit of due diligence on it. If something sells at a low price, it can happen because of many reasons. One, the owner needs the liquidity, he has to let go. Two, they have a problem with the building. They have a problem with the unit. The homeowners association is not in, good harmonious relationship with all the people who live there. So many things can go wrong. It can be a leak somewhere that they just patched up. So it's very difficult to ascertain that kind of opportunity because the due diligence that goes with it can be, taxing, can be quite a risk for me. If you buy pre-selling, if something's wrong with it, you can ask your developer to fix it up before you actually take the turnover, right? You can do a punch list, you can only get it, and besides, there are warranties, right? So it's very important for us that once we want to execute, we know that we're safely executing also. Because there are times when you think, oh, it's a good buy, but you did not discover or you did not know all the facets of information that's also there to know. That's the reason why the price is low. So that's why, it's almost like comparable to buying a second-hand car. sometimes you don't know what you're going to get, right? You can, get a great price, but that can be a clunker next week. But if you buy brand new, you can always return it to the dealer. You can always have them fix it. You have a warranty for about a year. So, ako ganun lang. As an investor, I need to make sure that when I execute on a purchase, that again, my downside is covered.
Okay. So, thank you, sir. So, I think reselling is much safer, right? Tama, sir,
Most
no?
especially,
Okay.
Pao, because I know you have great deals these days. Right? Those deals weren't there when the market was okay. And now, because there is a crisis, buyers can have, a heyday choosing deals that you're coming up with. So, I mean, why won't I take advantage of those?
Right. Yes. So yeah, with the promos that is being offered right now for the projects that we have. Okay, in your observation, sir, during the start of the pandemic, what have been some of the most transacted types of investment instruments in the market? Was there any shift in the types of transactions pre and post COVID, particularly in the real estate purchases?
You see, that's the thing that favors real estate at a time like this. The fact that it's not too liquid. A lot of people will often say, "Oh, that's quite a disadvantage of real estate." But somehow, in a crisis period, for as long as you have your emergency fund, for as long as you have other sources of liquidity, then you have all this luxury not to let go at a wrong price. And that's the reason why you don't exactly see too much of the secondary market, even at the secondary market side, that there are a lot of transactions and sales. When the COVID pandemic struck, what were hard hit? Stocks, funds, time deposits, because it's so easy to liquidate. And because it's also too easy to liquidate, what people did was simply liquidate. And that's the reason why prices drop. Normally, when you're holding real estate, number one, you're assured you have staying power. Because you cannot turn that into cash easily. Or there might be other stuff that you own, other investments that you have, that can bring forth the liquidity you need just in case of an emergency. So that's the reason why real estate somehow, look at the charts, look at all the prices, even during 1997, even during 2008. If there was a drop, it is not exactly the kind of drop you see with marketable security stocks and bonds. It will be a very small drop, and then after that, it plateaus and gets flat, and then it rises up again. That's how real estate behaves, because it's a natural long-term investment instrument.
Okay. So real estate is really the way to go, sir, when you want a long-term investment. Okay. So thank you. For our last question, sir, what I would like to ask you is, Fitch projected our GDP to shrink to negative 8%, which caused alarm for some, if not many investors. What can we advise or what can we share to our investors related to this concern?
Okay. I would probably have advice, again, on two ends. Because let's face it, there are people who are in dire straits. As far as I'm concerned, they should preserve whatever liquidity they have. They should make sure that their powder is dry. They have to survive this particular pandemic. However, if you have a kitty, if you already have a base, if you have a portfolio, now is the time to really consider positioning for growth. Because assets are cheap. Across the investment world, there are a lot of assets that are selling for cheap. I always say this. Why is it that when the malls go on sale, we all flock to the malls? When investments are coming up with great deals, we avoid them. It is when they're selling at top price, when people are confident, that's the time we buy them. So what happens? No deal, higher price. Now that we have a crisis, you get a price that probably hasn't changed, which is not usual, right? There was a time when, Ortigas Land raised prices like almost every quarter. Now you haven't done that in a long period, and there's a deal to go with it. Why aren't people buying? See, that's the question I have. But for malls, we're gonna go there when there's a sale period. So again, as investors, we have to manage one thing ourselves. The thing to manage would be emotions. If we become emotional investors, we will never get far ahead. The way to deal with this is to control our fears, make sure we get greedy when others are fearful. That's the way to go.
Okay. So control your fears, sir. And then probably get that courage to get on to those deals that developers are offering, especially with Ortigas Land, with the promos that we're offering now.
Don't throw your cares to the wind. You still have to be risk managed. But the more important thing is to take risk, because now's the time when the risk return balance is favoring the investor. Now's the time.
Okay. So thank you so much, Sir Rex, for answering all our questions for this afternoon. So, and that wraps up our webinar for today. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Rex Mendoza, for sharing your time, knowledge, and expertise with us on this Saturday afternoon. And of course, to everyone who tuned in even on the weekend. Again, I am Paulina Aguilar. Thank you so much and have an awesome day ahead.
Get a chance to take home an Apple gadget. Get in touch with our property specialists to know how to get an Apple gadget from Ortigas Land.